Today in Draw My Life, Bart's death. We all know that The Simpsons is one of the most popular cartoon series in the world. It debuted in December 1989 and already has around 700 episodes. In fact, some believe that the show has powers as events that had happened in the series have become reality. Today, we bring you the story of one of the lost episodes, those that were never broadcasted. If you don't want to miss any more lost episodes, then subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. The episode in question is titled Bart's Death and is a lost episode corresponding to the first season. From what it's on the internet, no one who was working on the show at the time likes to talk about it. And let's not even talk about Matt Groening, the creator of the series, who was the one who wrote the entire episode. In the production of the first season, Matt began to act very strange. If someone mentioned something about his behavior, those present would get angry and forbid talking to Matt about it. One person managed to talk to Matt about the episode, but the result wasn't good at all. When Matt heard that this person had mentioned the missed episode of the first season, his face turned pale and he began to shake. Then the person asked him if he could tell him any details about the episode, to which Matt made a face that looked like he was about to cry. He took out a piece of paper, wrote something on it, and handed it to the person. Before leaving, he begged him not to mention the episode ever again. Matt had written a webpage address on the paper. When the person walked in, the computer screen went completely black, except for a yellow text that prompted him to download a file. However, as soon as the download finished, the computer went crazy because it caught the virus. Nothing seemed to solve the problem, so he resetted the computer. The file was copied to a hard disk, and once the computer restarted, an attempt was made to open it again. Then the episode appeared. The first part looked pretty normal, except that the characters acted in a peculiar way. They didn't seem to be themselves. Homer was more angry than usual. Marge was very depressed, while Lisa seemed to be very anxious, and Bart only showed a look of anger and complete hatred towards his parents. The plot of the episode was about the family going on a trip. At the end of the first part, the plane was taking off. Bart was doing his thing, joking and playing around as expected. Only suddenly, when the plane was at a considerable height, the boy broke one of the windows of the aircraft and was sucked out. Bart's corpse appeared next, barely recognizable. Matt had the idea of using death to make the series more realistic, and he did with this episode, as a very realistic animation was made of the body. The first part ended with a shot of Bart's corpse, and the second part began with Homer, Marge, and Lisa sitting around the table crying. For a few minutes, only the sound of their cries was heard, which as time went by became more realistic. The pain of Bart's death could be heard. Furthermore, the animation style began to deteriorate as the characters cried more. It got to the point where the drawings became warped shadows with brightly colored strokes. Sinister faces appeared in the back window, but they appeared as flashes of light and could hardly be distinguished. The family's crying continued through the entire second part, with the sound becoming increasingly heartbreaking and the image increasingly blurred and unrecognizable. The person who got the episode didn't know what to expect from part 3, and they didn't really want to find out. But the next part began with a text announcing that a year had passed since Bart's death. The family was still sitting at the table, but their appearance was completely different. Their bodies were too thin, almost skeletal, and there was no sign of Maggie or the pets. So the family made the decision to pay a visit to Bart's grave. The city of Springfield had changed and was empty, as if it had been abandoned. As the family walked through the cemetery, the surrounding houses grew older, dated, and neglected. There was no one in Springfield. In the next shot, the family finally reached Bart's grave. But instead of being an ordinary grave like any other, the boy's corpse was on the ground, just as it had been at the end of the first part. And they did that for a few minutes. When the family stopped crying, they began to look at Bart's body on the ground. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face and he said what appeared to be a joke. However, this version had cut the audio for that part. The end of the episode had come, and slowly the camera moved away from Homer's face. Little by little, the rest of the graves that were on the background and around the cemetery began to appear. It was when the person was surprised because the graves carried the names of all the guests who would be in the episodes of The Simpsons, even the names that the audience in 1989 shouldn't know about and those that hadn't yet appeared on the program. All the graves had a date under their names. For guests who had died since the episode's production, such as Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the date of their graves matched their date of death. Suddenly, the credits appeared on the screen, without music and looking very sinister. They didn't look like credits made on a computer, but rather handwritten. The last image of the episode was the family sitting on the sofa like in the beginning. Only this time they were drawn in hyper-realistic style like that of Bart's corpse. After a while, the person who had seen the episode thought about the dates of the graves. This could be used to predict the death of the guest, taking into account that this episode was produced in 1989. But in the cemetery, all the graves were dated, even those of the guests who to this day haven't died yet. The rest of the tombs had something very peculiar since absolutely all bore the same date of death. According to the guy's anecdote, he had to get rid of the computer on which he watched the episode as the device didn't work properly again. The episode couldn't be deleted and opened at random times. Even after erasing the contents of the hard drive, the episode was still there. And to make matters worse, the computer didn't seem to run out of battery. It always stayed on no matter how much you pushed the button. Researching on the internet, the person discovered that this episode was broadcasted in a suburb outside the city of Portland in the United States. He also discovered that someone who had seen the episode on television was selling a VHS copy, so he decided to buy it in the hopes that the episode on the tape would be different from the episode he had downloaded. However, it was not like that since the episode was the same one that he had already seen. What caught his attention was that the ads had images of tragedies that hadn't yet happened in 1989. But this wasn't the only thing, because this person saw the tape with a friend, but his friend saw something completely different than him. Apparently, a news report had appeared on the news dated June 6, 2013, where it was reported that millions of people had died in their sleep. Do you remember the date the graves were? Yes, it's the same. The other difference was the phrase that Homer said while looking at Bart's corpse, because on the tape it could be heard, "If only we all had the same luck." What other episodes do you want to see on the channel? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any. Until the next video!